Hello, today we're going to talk about Agentic RAG. We talked before about naive, advanced subjects like embeddings and chunking strategies, and it's all come as components that can help us improve and make the RAG pipeline much more powerful. But that pipeline works whenever you put a prompt in place and then you ask for a question. Then the retrieval source is going to be used to actually search for any related information that's going to augment the prompt to go to the LLM and give you an answer. And this process happens every time. Now, where Agentic RAG comes in is making it more powerful by adding the reasoning portion of it. And how do we do that? We're going to see together right now. This is the basic RAG pipeline as it is. As we talked, it's the prompt, it's augmented from a retrieval source, passed to the LLM, and the LLM is going to synthesize an answer that is given back to the user, of course. Now, Agentic RAG, by adding reasoning, it introduced an agent in the middle. And that agent, its responsibility is being a supervisor, following the control tower pattern, which in its place, it takes decisions of where it's gonna retrieve information, if it needs to make any calculations, if it needs to talk to multiple sources and process the data before actually giving it to the original LLM to synthesize a response. And the way we can see this is this agent sits right here, the supervisor agent. And once a prompt comes in, it's going to be passed to the supervisor agent. And it's going to be a decider of where the information that we need to augment with is going to happen. And for example, we're going to use an example of an analytics company and what kind of questions or prompts a user can ask is going to let the supervisor make decisions depending on it before going again to the main LLM that is going to synthesize. So one of the examples that we can have is how much revenue did we do in the third quarter, for example. So how much revenue in Q3 2024? What's going to happen is the supervisor agent is going to say, oh, that sounds like it's an internal database kind of retrieval because we have the data internally. And in this case, the supervisor agent is going to say, I'm going to retrieve from here. And again, going back to the embeddings part, it's going to embed the prompt. It's going to send it to, let's say this is an internal database that is a vector database that holds embeddings. And then it's going to retrieve back whatever information needed. And from there, it's going to also send it to the LLM, the main LLM, that's going to synthesize a response to the user in this case. That's one of the examples. One of the other examples that I can have is give me an analysis about analytics companies in 2024. And that could be a question that the supervisor agent looks at and says, like, this doesn't sound, it reasons it to be not something that is in my internal database, but it could be in a different source like a public knowledge base. And in this case, the supervisor agent says, okay, I know this kind of information is not going to make sense to be in our internal database. I'm going to go and decide to pull it from public knowledge base wiki to grab this information. And again, the process again, once that's grabbed, it sends it to the main LLM that synthesizes and sends the response in this case. And now, if you ask a question like compare our revenue to other companies in the analytics space, the supervisor agent here has an interesting scenario, which is the multi-retrieval one. The idea is it's gonna reason that it needs to do three tasks. One is to grab the revenue of our analytics company that we're talking about, and then go fetch through the internet, for example, from earning reports for other public companies to grab their revenue, and then use a calculator, in this case, to calculate the comparison between our company and other companies that do the same thing. So in this case, the supervisor agent is doing a multi-step retrieval between one, going to the internet and grabbing this information, going to our internal database and grabbing the information about our revenue, and then using the calculator tool to do the work. And all that, again, goes back to the main LLM to synthesize. So you can see how many scenarios can be handled with this control tower kind of concept. And there is something to note right here, which in our examples, we're saying that the prompt goes to the supervisor agent or the control tower, and then from there it decides what tooling or what retrieval source it can go to. But that could be also a multi-agent process. So if you believe in your system, for example, that you need an agent to sit on top of any tool or any data source because it needs to do, again, another like multi-step reasoning, or it needs to do some decision making before coming back, then it makes sense to actually have another agent right here that sits, let's say, in front of the internet tool. The supervisor agent in this case is waiting for work to be done through the internet agent in this case. And it can be the same example if you're going to put an agent in front of the calculator or any other tool. So now you can see how this system can become more sophisticated, but definitely you need to look at it from business perspective and business case for whatever it makes sense. But overall, accomplishing this will make your RAG pipeline much smarter and more powerful, because now your RAG pipeline has reasoning powers and decision-making optimization that you didn't have before in the most basic RAG pipeline. And one way to take a decision of if the supervisor agent goes to an agent or a tool is tools usually, whenever like you need a deterministic value or you want to calculate something that is deterministic, going to a tool directly makes sense. If you want to go to a retrieval source because you know exactly what you need and there is no complex reasoning or multi-steps that needs to be done before getting the data that you need, then it makes sense to go to the retrieval source directly. But then for more complex scenarios, it makes sense to actually have an agent that you talk to, and that agent is talking to whatever tool or whatever data source that needs to get information from or do some kind of calculation or some work, some unit of work. So if you're building smart retrieval pipelines or RAG pipelines, this makes so much sense. And again, what I try to give scenarios where you're going to tools, you're going to data sources directly, or you're talking to agents, or you're talking to multi-agents, and have multi-retrieval scenarios. But you don't need to complicate it. You have to look at what your business needs or your case needs, use case needs, and from there, take a decision of what makes more sense to you. This is Agentic RAG, and thank you so much.